Hi, Dan. How, Joe? Always great seeing you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Drianto. I'm sorry. I was going to call Andrianto. Yes. I was going to say Adriano, but I screw people's names up a lot. I'm sorry. And when will ERG circulating supply reach 100%? And what is the big plan after that? Thanks. So, Joe, what happens when the ERG circulating supply reaches 100%?
So that'll be sometime in, I think, 2046. Then we have to look at other ways to create a security subsidy, which we've already been thinking about and planning for. Okay, so in proof of work, let's say Bitcoin, the traditional thought is, okay, fees are going to subsidize security. But then the reality is that is a sketchy path forward. I honestly don't think that's going to work, right? I don't think there's enough value that's being generated in fees to support the type of network that's there today. And I think that if the cap increases, then it's basically your attack cost just kind of is more profitable because you have less of an incentive and a higher cap. So that gap gets bigger, and that's kind of a profitability gap potentially. Now it's going to be interesting to see, number one, what happens. I think probably it's gonna be a contentious point, like issue at some point. Some people will say, well, if we make the block space smaller, it creates more of a incentive to compete and pay more fees, and so hopefully we can create artificial scarcity on chain enough that it'll cover that. Some people think there needs to be scaling solutions that recycle fees back to miners. The reality is they don't have much of a plan in place. In Ergo, I think the storage rent is number one huge because it's kind of taking block space itself, the chain history, and making it a scarce resource that over time concentrates the value per byte. So we will have some recirculation of dust, and some miner fee will be charged in storage rent periodically, which it's really not that heavy of a fee, and it is adjustable. So miners have some ability to make sure that the economics and market demand there makes sense. Now we also have an interesting vector, which is the launching native tokens via work. So potentially, we'll see projects that spin up that want to build on top of Ergo, and their distribution mechanism is proof of work, to where they allow miners to essentially mine native tokens, and with the implementation of Babel fees, they can swap that for their cash out profit to cover their costs, their infrastructure, pretty seamlessly. And the reality is, we may see that this year, right? We're not talking 2046. That's already being engineered. Now, and I do think that storage rent potentially opens up a secondary economy for miners, mining pools themselves, to where they start to interact more with DeFi, which to some degree makes a lot of sense because they are the point of, let's say, they're the first to get ERG that are released to miners. They're kind of like the first to touch ERG. So it does make sense that they become liquidity providers and interact more in terms of DeFi and different frameworks in the ecosystem. That never really happened in Ethereum proof of work. Now, I think we did see a lot of flash botting, flash loan arbitrage, wedge trading, that kind of thing, where they try to basically MEV the existing market. That's theoretically possible in an extended UTXO. It's just a lot harder. You'd have to chain things, and we'll see where that goes longer term. But I do think the ability for miners to have greater tools longer term, whether it's storage rent or native tokens, or the potential to create a return is going to build a different incentive model than currently exists around proof of work. And over time, combination of factors should create some security subsidy to assist, in keeping miners paid long term. It's in the incentive of every single project on top of the network for that to happen. And so having, even if you had an existing project, potentially they could, offer some incentive for miners to keep mining.
Yeah, I think the idea about native tokens utilizing proof of work for their own for their own ecosystems, and then using Babel fees to swap that, I think is actually a really good and sustainable way of going about things. And I mean, really, it has to be proportionate to the growth of the ecosystem, right? So, of course, there have to be enough projects that launch big enough ecosystems that will then make enough of a pot for this to happen, right? So there's a critical mass. But I think that's actually it's scalable, right? So that solution is scalable and sustainable. So I'm a fan of that particular solution myself.